Hello and welcome to this panel presented by A2IM. The question that we have to address is as follows. How have industry changes affected artists' licensing deals? What can labels do when an artist has been successful on a label, is no longer releasing new music and is free to go elsewhere? How can record labels continue to provide value to these artists who may wish to leave the label and try to do things on their own? And with me to discuss this topic on the panel, I have Slim Moon from Kill Rock Stars and Alex Hock from Better Noise Music. I'm Rupert Skellet from Beggars Group. I'd quite like to just hand over to Slim to give a little biog of his music industry experience, and then to Alex, and then back to me for my little minute or so. Over to you, Slim.
Thanks. It's a small panel. I hope
the best.
Yeah, I hope my experience is relevant enough. I founded record label Kill Rock Stars in 1991 and ran it for 15 years. Left in 2006 and kind of wandered for a while. First working for other labels, then doing management, and then actually going to grad school and leaving the music industry for a while. But while I was gone, my wife ran Kill Rock Stars, and recently she moved on and I returned. So I'm back at the label that I founded 30 years ago, and we're celebrating our 30th anniversary. And I've been back about 18 months and trying to learn all the new realities.
Great, thank you. Alex.
Well, congratulations on 30 years. That's pretty exciting. So I am Alex. I am currently the in-house counsel for Better Noise Music, and also 10th Street Entertainment, and 519 Music Publishing. We're all under the same umbrella and owned by Mr. Alan Kovac. So I pretty much negotiate all of the record deals, publishing deals, management deals, artist management deals, but I primarily really dig in and work with the label side. But the day-to-day can greatly vary, especially during COVID times, being virtual. But yeah, prior to Better Noise, I worked with Sony Music for global digital business and legal affairs, and which kind of led me to the path of now being a Merlin board member. And working in the digital world. So that's my little tidbit, but I come from a complete background of music industry because my father was in it for about 30 years. So as a promo guy, yeah, so that's kind of where I got the music from.
Who was your promo guy with?
He was with MCA and Atlantic, and actually Steve Klein, who is our COO for Better Noise, worked under my father. My father worked under his father at Atlantic, Dickie Klein. So yeah, it's
some great stories.
Full circle. Yeah, yeah. But that is me.
All right, thanks, Alex. Well, I do a very similar job you do, by the sounds of it, but at Beggars, and our labels are 4AD, Matador, Rough Trade, XL, and Young. I've been working here in business affairs for about 21 years, and before that I was in private practice, and Beggars were a client, so there's another couple of years on top of that. And just like you, Alex, I do a lot of the recording agreements, publishing agreements, and also a lot of digital licenses as well. I mean, we do quite a few through Merlin, but we also do quite a few on our own. Okay, so back to the question. I thought the way to break this down would be to start with the easier part of it, which I think is looking at the industry changes that there have been recently. And it's interesting to hear, Slim, that you were away from the record industry for a while, because I think you have a really clear grasp of what has changed from when you went away to since you've come back. Could you identify some of the relevant changes in the music industry that you perceive?
I think when we spoke before, I think I said when I left, it was a vinyl and download business. And when I came back, when I left, it was a CD and download business. Sorry. When I came back, it's a vinyl and streaming business. Yeah, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of complication with, we were teased or threatened for a long time about how the internet was going to be democratizing. And I think that leveled the playing field. And I think, like always with those kinds of things, it didn't turn out exactly like people expected. It does in some ways, and it totally doesn't in other ways,
Yeah. I mean, what we've experienced with the growth of streaming, the dominance of streaming, is the massive change is the difference in the way you have units are consumed. I mean, in the old days, it used to be all about week one, and you were seeing significant units in week one. And, to get a number one, you would have to sell hundreds of thousands of units. Nowadays, that dynamic has changed completely. So you need very few units now much fewer units to get a number one album. So the revenue flows in over a much longer period of time. But you still need that marketing and promotional push at the beginning to sort of get the release into orbit so that it gets to a place where it is going to stay somewhere on the streaming services and continue to generate revenue long term.
Right.
Yeah.
And but what constitutes the beginning seems to have changed. The first 15 years, you did some build up before a release day, but then you did a lot of promotion in the next 4 months after it came out. And it feels like, I think the transition probably happened over a period of time, so people are used to it, but just being away and then coming back, it was so jarring for me how everything happens prior to release date now, or so much of it does, the big focus is there.
Yeah, the whole pitching process, a lot of the DSPs love the good lead time of 6 weeks. So it's, the planning ahead, production, of course, now is difficult on the physical side, but also when we're trying to move as fast as some of our artists do, to allow for that appropriate lead time to be able to have like a fully integrated marketing plan and to make sure that all of the appropriate streaming partners are lined up, that the pitch has been out there, and that, we've got playlisting, editorial playlisting, but the ultimate goal, and, this is a catalog conversation, that ultimate goal is to have people add the song, whichever song you're releasing, to their own personal playlist so that it just becomes part of their day-to-day soundtrack. So.
Yeah. And it doesn't end there, does it, once the release happens, because you still need to keep pushing it over a much longer time frame if you're going to see the revenue continue to flow. You've got to make sure that the track is on the right playlists, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it's still kind of I still see there's a massive single mentality, of course. But as far as our label is concerned, I know we really invest the time and effort into the A&R side and really developing and building these bands that we sign so that they do have an everlasting catalog, and it's not just some one-hit wonder, or we throw something up to see what sticks. There's just so much data and research ahead of time that goes into it, to really make sure that we're making the right decisions. But people still like listening to albums, of course, but I guess it depends on what genre we're in. Yeah.
Okay. So going back to something you said about the long promise about the democratization of the industry. I think it's certainly true to say that the access to market has been democratized. There are so many players out there. And if you're an artist, you're looking to get to market, there are so many routes, way more than there used to be. The gatekeepers, the majors and the bigger independents, they don't have that sort of market access power that they used to. In what way do you think the promise of democratization hasn't been fulfilled?
Well, I think gatekeepers is the biggest thing. You know, I mean, we're a scrappy little label that's always made decisions towards independence rather than towards joining to increase our resources. And so anytime we can get in, anytime we can sneak in the door cheaply is a success for us. And some of the things that Alex is talking about are sort of beyond our, you know, the data and those things is just sort of beyond our ability, or because we're so album focused or artist focused, we're not as single focused as it sounds like your labels are, because we're just a scrappy little label, you know. Jumping to sort of that topic about the catalog and about licensing deals coming to an end, it does seem, the current dynamic does seem to level the playing field if you're just sitting back and collecting. At least it gives that appearance. But in terms of getting careers started, getting in the door, getting on playlists, there's gatekeepers just as there always have been. And I can't imagine, I always was skeptical of this idea that there would someday not be gatekeepers, or that the direct connection from the artist to the fan would be the primary thing without the assistance of folks like us to focus that and get it there.
Would you say that the gatekeepers are now the platforms rather than the labels?
I think that the labels have always had a curatorial function as well as a gatekeeper function, and that media has always had a gatekeeper function as well, and that you know, record stores and once upon a time had a gatekeeper function. And I think it's just the balance has shifted, but you can look at it and say, well, this is just like it was 50 years ago, just the names of the players have changed. Or you can look at it as, well, the balance has shifted a lot, and we have these DSPs who have so much power, and it's hard to it's hard for me, having not lived through the shift, to just suddenly be thrown in understanding that world and how they wield their power and how to work with them.
Yeah, it is difficult. I think the most, you know, logical comparison is, and it's always made, is you know, the radio program directors being the gatekeepers at one point. And I mean, they are still present in this world, that is for sure. But I think that now the DSPs have just essentially taken on that same function, where even though there's a lot of artist-friendly approaches and there's a ton of algorithmic playlists, there's still the you know, the major gatekeepers who curate the playlists, and so that's where labels play a really important role in helping artists access, you know, those special opportunities that are given. And it's you know, and it also helps, you know, labels do help cut through the clutter, because the limited attention spans right now, there's so much music out there. I do not envy A&R, I can tell you that, because it's a lot that you have to dig through. And I think that labels also, in a sense, are the gatekeepers, because, you know, they essentially have picked these artists and they've signed these artists, and they're working to develop these artists to then present to the rest of the gatekeepers, you know, the DSPs and such. But I think most importantly, when you are looking at the gatekeepers, it is about as much data as you can get, and taking a look and seeing certain successes, and then presenting that, seeing how well something does on a streaming service, and then presenting that information to radio to then work a song at radio after. It's kind of, you know, the flip-flop. It was radio first, now it's, you know, radio is just the second portion if something is succeeding for us.
Yeah, well, the quantity of content is another industry change I was going to raise. It seems to me that it's the opposite problem of what I experienced when I was a teenager. It was all about scarcity for me, because the kind of music I liked wasn't really on the radio. It was only in a handful of record shops in the UK. But now you just have the opposite problem. You have so much content. It's just mind-boggling. And there are so many pathways to the market. It's how you, as an artist, get your voice, your artistic vision, you know, to the masses. How do you get your? How does that happen?
Yeah, I think going back to the original, question of what value do labels have versus, in working catalog versus an artist. And to be clear, of course, my legal mind wants to make this point, if an artist has the opportunity to be able to take their masters, if they were just under a license, if they own the rights to go and be free with their catalog and work it that way, then that's one thing. But unless you are a
Today is Wednesday.
quite
May 25th.
successful artist, once the time comes and you're no longer doing active releases, you really do need someone to still dig into the catalog and just come up with initiatives, anniversary editions, stuff like that. And the pipelines are becoming a little more and more complex. So you're limited in your opportunities to be able to take, what you own and go off into the world and do, marketing initiatives on your own and get the same type of placement plays as a label would be able to get for you.
Yeah,
it's doable, but there is a lot of stuff out there.
So moving on to the question of the harder part of the question, if you like, of what can labels do to persuade artists to stay with them where they're on a license deal and the license has expired. I suppose that the choice of the artist at that point will be to extend, to re-up with the existing label, or perhaps go with a digital distributor or services company. Slim, when we were speaking on the phone a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned that when you got back into the industry, you had a sort of conversation with yourself about whether you would prefer to be a services company or a label. Do you want to talk a bit more about how that played out and why you chose what you chose?
Well, in my case, it's really been, that's a question that I ask myself all the time. I mean, to me, it's clear in this business and many others that providing services or doing distribution makes more money than being the curator or the rights owner. And so I've always thought, gosh, if I was smart, I would do these others better money-making parts of the business. And I've had opportunities at at times, but I'm just not interested in it. I don't need to die rich, and I really enjoy working with young bands and help them get it together and help them introduce their music and their everything else that they're all about to an audience and try to grow. With the model, with the way we run things, and what I'm interested in, what we run up against is that when we're successful, the bands outgrow us, and that's the hardest part of how we do business. And for us, that thing of bands taking their catalogs when their license is up has not been so much for them to go try to do it on their own. It's been for them to take their catalog to the new label that they're moving to as they outgrow us, to the new larger label.
Right.
Yeah, there's a massive value in catalog. Obviously, I mean, we can see all the acquisitions happening across the board, catalog acquisitions. But I think for us, yes, it's the upfront risk and putting up the money and developing these artists versus just, providing a distribution element. We very much, are traditional in the sense that we do record deals. It's important, it's critical to us, and we're a top independent rock label, and we've got everything from Five Finger Death Punch, we had Papa Roach, Motley Crue, but A2IM Nation, Atlas Genius, and though some of the artists, the more alternative artists, their catalog sits with other labels, we still try and make sure that anything that we release, there's also a look towards catalog to see with their other label, like what they can be doing to help drive sales. So, but yeah, it's providing a more in-depth, thoughtful approach and making sure that you're cutting through the clutter. Whereas if you come to the end of a license with your label, depending on the relationship, let's say the relationship's still good, but you're just kind of looking to them to see what exactly they can provide to your catalog. I'm sure there's always a renegotiation that's, that you can work out with the label if they want to continue the relationship and keep working it and help drive sales. But as far as taking your catalog, if you're not a massive well-known name, if you take your catalog and go straight to a distributor to just kind of cut the cord and you want to do things on your own, it's a heavy lift if you want to continue growing your catalog, and making sure that people are getting the access to it and creating new initiatives, because distribution partners, they're just pushing your content through. So I think that's where the element for labels really comes into play.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big difference between, a big distributor, a big services company, or even as in your case, Tim, if an artist moves to a major label at the end of a deal, you're looking at how much focus and attention, how many people are going to be really deeply caring about the ongoing success of your catalogue. I mean, speaking for Beggars, I mean, we have over 200 people around the world. We have people in every major record market, and they're promoting and making sure there's no, opportunities missed. So, for instance, if something happens online, then it's followed up very quickly, and that can be anywhere around the world. And you're just not going to get that kind of level of service at a service company or a distributor's company, because they have enormous catalogs. I mean, they have hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands.
Yep.
So I mean that is a big difference. Sometimes I wonder whether label identity is as important as we who work in record labels think it is. Do you think it is, Slim?
Well, I'm definitely hanging on to that. I know it's harder. It's a peeve of mine that the DSPs have done everything in their power to make the label invisible.
Yeah.
But so much of what we do with the label and with the artists is direct back and forth with the fan, direct communication with the fan, that curatorial function of being a trusted source is still pretty relevant for us. And you talked about scarcity, and it's sort of like leaning into scarcity even in this time, that there's not so many curatorial indie labels still really holding on to a label identity, so that every release, as there used to be, so that we try to have it so that every release is good on its own and also is part of a contextual story of the label that helps sort of fix the significance of the release in people's minds. It kind of gives it some context. And those those artists, I was just thinking about the artists who have gone to other labels who still have their catalogs. We still have a bunch of Shoo records and a bunch of Gossip records and a bunch of Deerhoof records, a bunch of December's records. And we do a lot of TLC. We pay a lot of attention to those catalog releases with vinyl reissues and greatest hits and, you know, licensing. And they all seem to be pretty satisfied with the fact that we're really paying attention. We're not just sitting back and collecting that money.
I think it also goes back to just the inception of, you know, starting this partnership with this artist. It's making sure that you are signing to a record label who's going to spend the time in curating your catalog and developing you as an artist, and you trust that person with your music and your career. I mean, the start of your career. So, and have an everlasting catalog, hopefully. So yeah, it's just, it goes back to the relationship too. You know, if everything is right in the relationship, it doesn't make much sense to just kind of try and get out of a relationship that's already working. I guess is the thing. And you have to trust that they're going to continue to work your catalog. It's in everyone's benefit.
When you started out, did you have a clear idea of what your label identity was, or did that sort of develop over the years?
I wanted to add to the thing I just said. I just realized, those bands I was talking about who still have their catalogs with us, even though they moved on to other labels. I think one of the things they enjoy is that our label has such a strong label identity that they're still being contextualized by that label identity with their catalog, even though they're also releasing new releases at a new label. Yeah, I had a strong idea 30 years ago, but it was 75% documenting the scene that I was in, and then spoken word, which was my own bizarre passion. And then 5 years into it, I started putting out Elliott Smith, and that was much more the scene next door and my own taste. And it became more and more a spread of documenting my scene and documenting my own taste.
Yeah, label identity, I think, has been critical for Alan as well, my boss. We started off as 11-7 and then did you know, a rebrand a few years ago as Better Noise Music, just by virtue of our identity has always been associated with, you know, hard rock. And so we wanted to, you know, spread our wings a little more and start picking up a more broad label identity and going into alternative and indie alternative. And so it just made sense at that time to rebrand as Better Noise Music, but it's still, it's key for us for every release that Better Noise Music identity is associated with these artists, because when people find out, like, you know, the dynamics of our label, and I mean, we've got this Mongolian rock band called The Who, and it's just like, it's seeing how all of these cool artists too collaborate with each other under a record label. And yeah, it's just important to have that established brand that people do trust.
Yeah, I mean, one of the points of commonality, I guess, between labels and services companies, distributors, is their networks. But I mean, I don't know about you guys, but what we found is that not all networks are of similar quality. And so we have found that with some of the smaller digital distributors, their coverage is really lacking in some areas. They're just not on certain DSPs in certain countries. Have you had any experience of that kind of thing, Alex?
So as far as rephrase that question. So it's
so I mean, there are obviously a lot of, I mean, for instance, there are a lot of just sort of app only or sort of online digital distributors who operate networks, but their coverage does not seem to be as wide as, say, for instance, even Merlin's or, you know, major labels or the bigger independents.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I think I'm misunderstanding the actual question, because it sounds like very much an affirmative statement that yes, there are a lot of
Yeah,
opportunities.
just whether you've experienced a similar thing with a digital distributor having a limited network.
Not necessarily.
Right.
Like, yes, I'm fully aware of that occurring, but me personally, no, I have not. Well, we work, Fuga is our worldwide digital distributor. So, Fuga has a vast network, and anything that Merlin doesn't cover, Fuga covers. So, as far as our label goes, we are very much international. But with the like smaller distributors,
Yeah.
I mean, right now, the current landscape, I see a lot of them just finding a home with some of the larger distributors.
So you operate between management and record labels, right, Alex?
Yes.
Have you been in a situation where you've been completely conflicted and not knowing which way to turn?
Yeah.
Is there anything
Thankfully,
you can say about that? I mean, obviously not giving any names or anything, but
thankfully there's always a boss above me.
I mean, hopefully you chose right and chose to re-up with a label.
Yeah, well, you know what? So they're a perfect example because we still love them dearly. But Papa Roach decided that they wanted to. We still have their catalog, and we put out a greatest hits this past year. It's been doing tremendously well. But that was also at the same time that they had decided to go to, I believe they're with ADA, and sort of do their own thing for future new releases. And so management, we manage Papa Roach as well. So they're still with management. And so I see that side of things, and, management's going to go with what's best for their band, and that, you have to respect that. I do see that management has to do a lot of the legwork now on the marketing side. And, we're still obviously working together on greatest hits and helping build the catalog, and the band is actively involved as well. It's just been kind of a good catalog initiative in that sense. But yeah, there's been plenty of times where it's just, you want to get something done, but sometimes the band just, they are choosing another path, and it's a sad day to see them leave, but at least, in the sense that we do still have catalog, we're still actively working with them, and, I see them on the management side. But yeah, conflicts for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and presumably it's the sort of valuations that are available now that you referred to earlier, that in this age of sort of minus interest or very low interest rates, and the valuations are crazy, and you have all kinds of non-music industry operators out there who are willing to pay a lot of money for rights. And then there's also obviously the question of the low percentages that you can get with these services companies. I mean, obviously as an artist, all the costs are going to come out of your side. So you might have, say, 95% of the revenue, but any costs are going to come out of that 95%. But it's still very hard to compete with as a record label, because the record label employs a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, opportunity is always key, and I think at the end of the day, like I said, if the relationship is working and you're having success together, then does it make sense to pull if you are in a position to be able to pull your catalog and just do it on your own? It's a lot of work, because I do see management working others on the catalog side, but artists that are not signed with Better Noise too. So yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but some artists that we've seen leave and gone somewhere else have come back. Has that happened to you, Slim?
We've got one. The artist Bitch did a record with us about 15 years ago, and then since then she's self-released, and she's also done some attempts at rebranding, where she put out a record under the name Beach, but she's back with us with a fantastic new record that'll come out next year. So a little bit of that, yeah.
And with you, Alex?
Yeah. Well, usually, since I've only been there, going on 4 years in September. So as far as artists leaving and then coming back, I don't think I've experienced that yet. But there are, tumultuous times throughout the relationship where it's, they just don't want to do what they need to be doing. Writing, recording, engaging with their fan base through social media. Now it's, it's also some of the bands that are, that have been around for some time, having to get them to engage like on TikTok and all these other platforms. It's like, it can be a big fight. And sometimes you think you're going to lose someone because of, all these things that you're trying to push on them for the benefit of the catalog and growth. But yeah, so I don't think I've seen anyone leave and then actually leave and then come back. But there has been some, some times in between where it goes silent.
Did you have any experiences when you were at Sony that might inform this debate? And maybe some artists who had migrated from an independent to Sony when you were there, and how they fared?
Well, so Sony is an interesting structure because I only worked in global digital business for Sony Music, for business and legal affairs. And so GDB, they handle all the streaming deals, and they kind of sit at the top of the Sony Music umbrella. So, all the Spotify, YouTube, etc. deals, then of course those deal terms apply down to all the labels under Sony Music. So I wasn't really working with the artists at Sony, so I can't really speak to, anything going on there besides the fact that the general knowledge of catalog is vast. I mean, I did work with the Orchard as well, and then actually Orchard for some time at Better Noise when they were our distributor as well. And
that's very interesting.
Independent.
Yeah, sorry, that was very interesting. The majors all have their own services company arms. Do you think they're hedging their bets? What do you think their game is? Do you think they know which is the winner, the eventual winner?
I think, and I brought it up earlier, pipelines are becoming a major issue with DSPs. And so Sony has their own in-house, reporting and integration, and they create their own pipelines to be able to push through the content to the DSPs. But if there are ways of improving that ingestion with the DSPs to improve the relationship, I think that's where you see a lot of the acquisitions occurring. It's the infrastructure to be able to really build out and provide better distribution opportunities. But yeah, they're all behemoths, and then some like to say that Merlin is the the fourth major, but it's an interesting dynamic. But I think it comes down to a lot of pipeline, and then obviously consistent catalog acquisitions, market share.
Another benefit, I think, of staying with the record label is, which obviously stems from having a great amount of people working for you, is the ability to have well-resourced licensing departments, or at least networks and good contacts with people in the licensing world and people in the advertising world and people in the film world. They know that there's a place that they can go to for quality music. I mean, is that your experience, Slim?
Yes, absolutely. We work with an outside company for sync license, for example, but one of the founders did it in-house at our label for 3 years. So before she started the company. So the relationship with that company is so close that I feel like it's a lot like doing it in-house. And that they have that curatorial function where they're, rather than just having a giant catalog of a little bit of everything, they have a high quality catalog, and people go to them for quality.
Yeah. I mean, for us, it's interesting because being that we have such a big rock catalog, and we also have the publishing company, so there are a lot of one-stop opportunities on our side, but still it's, rock music's a little harder to push for syncs and all that, but we still get it done because of all the relationships that we do have across the board. I mean, we have a tremendous amount of support, and the label side still fully supports management and helps provide guidance and insight to some of our managers that are working artists that aren't on the label. It's it's all about contacts, networks. So
yeah, on a similar sort of note, in that we're relying on record labels' expertise. Certainly what we found is physical record market, which for us, vinyl is really, really important still. And if you're going to move to a digital aggregator, you're just not going to get that at all. And I mean, the problems in manufacturing capacity are well discussed, and particularly acute, I think, in the US, and they're pretty bad here in Europe too. But for us, vinyl is a massive part of what we do, and the whole culture of vinyl and record shops, independent record shops, is really important. So if you're an artist who values that sort of thing, then you shouldn't be going with a digital aggregator. Do you still do a lot of physical, Alex?
Oh my God, yeah. We definitely do a lot of physical, but you know what? In saying that, our one of our key initiatives is to really drive things over to digital. I mean, yeah, manufacturing deadlines and just the costs. We always like to provide that level of service. Of course, physical is massive in rock, but
the margins aren't great.
Say that again.
The margins aren't great compared to digital.
Yeah, well, but it's being smart about it, right? So it's making sure that you're not, stacking up a massive amount of inventory that's just sitting in a warehouse. But at the same time, we are really challenging and driving our artists to digital. I mean, like that always has been the case, but digital's key moving forward, no matter what, especially for catalog. So, for the big artists like Motley, who still do a lot of physical sales, and Five Finger Death Punch, they really count on it. It was quite apparent that during COVID, with all the increase in streaming, they could see the margins and how important it is to really drive people to digital.
Great, thanks. I have just been timed out on the chat by our administrator, so I'll wrap things up here. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Slim, for that.
Thank you.
I mean, one thing, obviously, and I think you touched upon this earlier, Alex, is although they are much maligned these days, life for copyright deals are always a solution to this problem.
Well, yeah. I mean, yes, yeah, they are.
So you're never in this situation. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
It was great to meet you both.
Great to meet you.
Absolutely.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.